How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name's Josh Hutchinson. Today, Binksy and I are continuing our series of divisional previews by discussing the Central Division. I'm pumped, so without further ado, let's hit it, motherfuckers. Binksy, how you doing, bud?
I'm good, man. You caught me off guard with that one. That wasn't in the show. That wasn't in the show notes.
That's the idea. Like, I'm only gonna pull that out when it's been a while, when no one's expecting it.
When you got to wear a Blackhawks sweater, okay.
That's right. Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah, that's right. All right, let's just jump right into it. We're going to discuss each team's performance last year, their outlook for this upcoming season. We're going to highlight some key players for each team, assess their value based on their ADPs, and then we'll also give you a potential sleeper and someone to punt for each team. So let's kick things off, going in alphabetical order once again. Let's start with the Arizona Coyotes. So last year, Arizona finished 7th in the division. They were pretty bad, not as bad as previous years. They had some high points, but still not very good. So this year, I think they've made some moves. They're bringing up some of their young talent, and they're looking a little more promising, in my opinion. So let's kind of jump in and talk about. Well, first of all, let's talk about their goaltending. Their goaltending was actually pretty good last year. They had a team save percentage of .914 at 5v5, which is pretty good. Mm-hmm. And their 5v5 shooting percentage was actually pretty decent too. They just got caved all across the board in terms of scoring chances, Corsi 4, expected goals 4 percentages. So they weren't getting a ton of chances, but when they were converting on them, and their goalies kind of showed up and played pretty well. So their power play, not great, bottom third of the league. But they definitely had some high points. There was a point at the start of the season where they were one of the best power plays in the league. So let's talk about some goalies. So they're rolling with the same tandem this year, Karl Vejmelka and Connor Ingram. Vejmelka had 60% of the starts last year. And his ADP is 214.27 in Fantrax. And he had a .915 save percentage at 5v5. And then there's Connor Ingram, kind of the forgotten guy. He had that amazing game in the playoffs against Colorado 2 years ago, where he made like over 50 saves and they lost in overtime against the Avs, where he basically held Nashville in it. And then he got picked up on waivers last year. Really struggled to start the year, looked really bad, but then ended up with a .920 save percentage at 5v5. He ended up getting quite a few more starts near the end of the season. Vejmelka was getting the lion's share for the first half, and then they started kind of rolling them 50-50 for the rest of the season. He was really solid, and I think people aren't really paying attention to Connor Ingram so much. I think he's going to get a little more playing time than people think, and he may be a legitimate 0G option here. He's not being drafted anywhere. So Karl Vejmelka, though, how are you feeling about these two guys? Like, are you taking a stab on either Vejmelka or Ingram? I think Vejmelka is a pretty good 0G option as well.
I haven't taken any stabs on them, but I think they are viable 0G candidates. I feel better about going into the season picking up Ingram at some point rather than spending any draft capital on Veggie. A lot of people don't know this about Ingram. In addition to the regular time losses, 8 overtime losses, right? So was actually keeping the team in it. And as much as they were getting caved, he was actually managing to keep them in games, and then, talent losing out in the end. So that .920 actually pretty darn good, right? So for a team that is going to give up a bunch of shots for the 0G options on this team, I feel a lot better about Ingram, and he's going to be on a watch list for me. I haven't been drafting Vejmelka, but there are plenty of fantasy minds out there that I think have earnest thought process about the 0G strategy that have gone with Vejmelka towards the end of the draft. And I think it's like a viable way to go, but I'm more comfortable waiting on Ingram and seeing how things flesh out. Like, I think it really easily could be 50-50, or if Ingram goes on a run, even better than that, because he's still pretty young.
Yeah, they're both watch list guys for me for sure. I think Vejmelka, I think I would take a stab on him late in the draft if he's still there, just because he probably will still get the majority. Like, it'll probably be 60-40, I would imagine, but that still means Ingram will have some value. And in general, I think Arizona's just better as a team. So their outlook in that way, in terms of getting more wins, I think they'll probably get more wins as well. So that's pretty exciting for them. So in terms of their top six, we're looking at, if we look at daily faceoff, we've got that line that just kind of blew up last year. Clayton Keller, Barrett Hayton, Nick Schmaltz. They'll probably stay together at least at the start of the season. Then we've got Matthias Michelli, Logan Cooley, Jason Zucker, at least according to Daily Faceoff. I actually think Dylan Genther may get some time on that second line playing with Logan Michelli.
Yeah.
Kind of have like a kid line. I think Zucker could definitely be kind of a utility guy moving up and down the lineup, but I think it makes more sense to put the three young guys together. I don't know. How are you feeling about that in terms of 5v5 deployment? Does that seem about right?
That totally seems right to me. And you're virtually cemented with Schmaltz and Hayton and Keller, right? Like, the team was immensely more successful with that specific three on the line versus them broken up or them not playing together. And Hayton represents the real value for me. You're gonna have to pay in your drafts to get Keller, and Schmaltz was sneaky last year, but is kind of no longer sneaky. Like, you're not going to have to overpay with a ADP above 130 in either format that you want to reference. I'm most excited about Hayton and his value, like plus 200 or not drafted, depending on your format, and 178 shots on goal at a really decent shooting percentage. So I'm excited about that. Like, it's a pretty short list for the Coyotes, obviously. And, of those three that are really noteworthy, Hayton's the only one that I'm probably going to take a stab at, just based on ADP. But it's more than likely the only person that I end up from this roster is probably Dursey.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. I think Dursey's a really good value pick. So now that we're talking about ADP value, let's kind of dive into who we think is going to be the best value pick out of the fantasy relevant players on this team. So, I mean, also in terms of the power play PP1, I think it's probably going to shake out as Keller, Schmaltz, Hayton, potentially Michelli to start. But I think that fourth forward is kind of up in the air. You could see Michelli, you could see Zucker, you could see Logan Cooley. I think Logan Cooley may even at some point supplant Barrett Hayton on that top line. I think his ceiling is considerably higher than Hayton, maybe not for this season, but long term. So it's really just gonna. It's really just going to be whether or not he can perform in his rookie season. It's quite a jump from college, or at least, I mean, as a freshman in college, it's a big jump from there to the NHL. So we'll see how that goes for him. But I think there's potential for him to end up on the top line. And then Dursey, I think, is going to be the power play quarterback. That's kind of the way that I'm feeling about it. There was talk about Valimaki. There's talk about JJ Mosier. I think it's definitely Sean Dursey, at least to start the year. So yeah, let's look at some value here. So Clayton Keller, Nate's got him for 35 goals, 83 points. Blake's got him for 32 goals, 85 points. Seems about right to me. And then his ADP is 39.26 in Fantrax. So it's probably about where he should be drafted, in my opinion. Nick Schmaltz, Nate's got him for 29 goals, 73 points. Blake's got him for 23 goals, 74 points. ADP is 136.66, as you mentioned. I still think that's great value for Nick Schmaltz. Like, he's probably going to be just sub point per game in the mid 70s mark. That's kind of where he's been pacing the last few years. And I mean, his situation has not really changed that much. Still playing with Keller. They're kind of stapled together. So yeah, I think that's probably about right, and that's pretty good value in my opinion. Barrett Hayton, Nate's got him 27 goals, 57 points. Blake's got him for 25 and 56. His ADP is 203.97. So I agree with you. I like that value a lot for Barrett Hayton, especially at the end of your draft. Sean Dursey, Nate's got him for 10 goals, 38 points. Blake's got him for 10 goals, 41 points. ADP is 162.01. He's going to be close to one of the last power play quarterbacks that's going to be drafted. So I really like that. I think he'll be a really solid 4D for you. Yeah, if he ends up being your 4D, I think you're going to be really happy with that. And then Matthias Michelli, Nate's got him for 13 goals, 48 points. Blake's got him for 15 goals, 54 points. His ADP is 307.35. So he could bring you some pretty nice value in a points league because he's not really, 307. That's essentially not applicable in terms of ADP. So like in regular leagues, like you're not getting that far down in the depth chart. So he's a legitimate value there. If you even consider it, he may just be a watch list guy depending on where he's deployed. So who are you taking in terms of these guys and where they're being drafted? Who's your favorite?
I think Dursey is probably my favorite. I think Hayton probably represents the best value, going really, really, really late. And as much as the talent should win out for Cooley, that age and experience is really going to rear ahead, and especially on a team where they're going to be down a lot, right? And you're going to have to be like very mentally strong. I think the top three and really top four, including Dursey, is just really all that you're going to be able to rely on. So for me, it's Hayton or Dursey. I don't want to go to the well with them with Keller and Schmaltz. I think they're viable, consistent fantasy options, but at their ADPs, my emotion, my gut just won't let me go to the Coyotes. And that's going to play out in your drafts. Like you're probably going to get better value on those two guys than you should. But for me, it's Hayton or Dursey. And I really like Dursey as a 4D. I don't really think there's a chance that Moser or Valimaki, even though they've been successful running the power play there, really supplant him. I think they brought him in for a reason, and I have seen flashes of the talent that should keep him there. So I'm most excited about those two.
Yeah, I think I'm excited about them as well. I'm still a big Nicky Schmaltz guy. I have been the last few years. I've been picking him late in drafts for quite a while, and it's paid off for me. Just sitting on my IR plus for the first part of the year, and then he shows out at the end of the year. It's like it's been pretty nice. So I still like him at 136.66. I think you're getting great value in points leagues. He's not a big peripherals guy. He's a high efficiency shooter as opposed to a high volume shooter, and doesn't really hit or block. But in a points league, he's really great. All right, in terms of oh yeah, and then I also had a few other names here. Lawson Krause is still around. He had a great year last year. Brings the periffs. He's at 198.05. Zucker, I think, will play up and down the lineup. He's at 220.64. Logan Cooley's at 228.01. He could end up being really great, but if you want to take a risk on a rookie, he's probably one of the only ones that I'd take a risk on, to be honest. Blake has him actually for 49 points. Nate didn't project him, but Blake's got him for just under 50 points. And then Dylan Ganther's not being drafted. He could be, I'd put him on my watch list for sure. Like he had decent production playing with nobody in the limited games that he had in the NHL last year. He was about half point per game. So I think putting him with Cooley and Michelli, you could really see him perform. So do you have any opinions about those guys? Like, are you drafting any of them at all?
I think that really applies to our punt list, right? Like,
yep.
There's not really a specific punt on this team because everybody represents a certain level of value, because you're really not going to have to pay a ton for any one of them, even the elite talent on the team. So there's certainly a lot of possibility of fantasy relevance, and honestly, there's there's probably 4 or 5 players that are going to sit right atop the watch list because there's going to be a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of talent that we really need to kind of wait and see flesh out in the first few weeks of this season.
Yeah. So in terms of punts, I said maybe Valimaki, but like you said, there's not. I like the value of most of these guys. And I mean, I don't think Valimaki's going to be fantasy relevant. He is being drafted late in drafts, but I just don't. I'm not really that interested. Last year we said you should be punting everyone not named Keller and Schmaltz, which I mean, I guess we were kind of wrong about that. Binksy said you should punt Gostisbehere, and we both said potentially Chikrin. So I think we were kind of wrong on that.
We were hemmed up with who should have been dealt and when, I think, at that point in the season.
Sure.
So
for sure. It was very up in the air. And then in terms of sleepers, this year I'm saying Cooley or Genther. I think I've kind of already said my piece on those two. I think they both have potential to play high in the lineup and could even slot in on power play one. I think they're both great offensive talents playing in their rookie years. And then last year we said Barrett Hayton or Nate Smith. Nate Smith didn't really play.
no,
Barrett Hayton really broke out, so we were kind of half right there. So
had a great
good.
season.
Yeah, that was really awesome. Any sleepers for you, Binksy? Any other guys you want to note? Or are we done with Arizona?
The deep sleeper has to be Cooley for me, but I think the real investable sleeper for me is probably Barrett Hayton. I think there's a higher ceiling than is really readily apparent.
All right, so let's move on to the Chicago Blackhawks. I think I'm wearing my Blackhawks jersey on stream for the first time. Last year, I was feeling kind of embarrassed that I had a Blackhawks jersey. It's a Jonathan Taves, and I wasn't really stoked about the way that things went down with him and the whole 2010 Kyle Beach situation. But I feel like with Connor Bedard around the corner, it's a new era for the Chicago Blackhawks. So I thought I'd throw the jersey on.
Get yourself a seam ripper and just rip it off.
Yeah, maybe, and just throw Bedard on there. That would be cool. So they were 8th in the division last year. They were bottom of the league in almost every category. Their shooting percentage was bad. Their 5v5 save percentage was bad. Had the 28th ranked power play. Not good. Not good for them at all. In terms of individual goalies, Peter Mrazek had an 899 5v5 save percentage when he was healthy. He was abysmal as expected. I think they got him to be abysmal because they were tanking. I mean, man, yeah. And then Arvid Soderblom actually had not a bad year. He had a 911 save percentage at 5v5. Jackson Stauber got into 6 games. He's an up and coming guy in the minors. He had a 920 5v5 save percentage, which is pretty impressive considering how bad the team was in front of him. So a couple of young guys that could be interesting. I think in dynasty leagues, take a look at Soderblom and Stauber just because I don't think that their stock is super high, but I think they're both going to probably get playing time this year. Peter Mrazek is always hurt. So, and they don't have Stalock there in their way. So I think they're gonna kind of roll with these young guys. They're both going to get time. And they showed out pretty well, even with the team bad in front of them last year. So none of these guys are being drafted. I don't think you should be drafting any of them. Just keeping those young guys on the watch list. I mean, are you opposed to that take, Binksy?
I don't know how you could even look me in my eyes if I was.
All right. So let's dive into the top 6. So Daily Faceoff has Taylor Hall, Connor Bedard, Lucas Reichel, which I think is kind of the consensus for most people as their top line. I think that's going to be a pretty nice top line at 5v5 for them. Connor Bedard is going to be awesome. Their second line, Athanasiou, Tyler Johnson, Taylor Radish. Tyler Johnson is actually has better production than people think. He's just injured all the time. So he is at the very least a watch list guy for me, Tyler Johnson. But yeah, that's their top 6 in terms of daily faceoff. I don't think I could really argue with that. Their bottom 6 is not good. And I can't see any of them playing up there. do you have any changes you want to make there?
No, I mean, I think Jason Dickinson is probably a sneaky play to creep his
Sure.
way into the top 6, but
Yep.
does it really represent fantasy value? I don't think so. I mean, it's
Yeah.
more important on the actual ice than on your fantasy roster.
All right, let's talk about the power play. So PP1, I think it's going to be Connor Bedard, Lucas Reichel, Taylor Hall, Taylor Radish, and Seth Jones. I think that's probably how things are going to shake out there. I think this is going to be a half decent power play. Not great, but pretty good. Like all of these guys have offensive upside. Obviously, Connor Bedard has ridiculous offensive upside. Seth Jones is a guy that can quarterback a power play. He had relatively solid production last year, even with no one to play with. So with some more weapons on the team, I think he should be pretty solid this year. But I mean, I don't mind that. Like, what are you thinking about their power play this year? I think that it might be one of the high points for them in a season that's probably still not going to be very good.
Man, there are a lot of people prognosticating out there that Bedard is, 70, 80, even 90 plus points out there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I think Dauber had him for over 90 points this
yeah,
year.
I
Yeah.
heard that and I was just like, that seems absolutely insane to me. Like the team around him is just not good enough to support that kind of output. And we're talking about like a possible Corey Perry power play 1, right? Like I think it'll be a lot better if they bring in Radish instead of Perry for a net front presence. But like how can you be that supportive of an overall success if Corey Perry is an integral part of what you're doing, right? Like we're not talking about the same Taylor Hall, and you know Bedard is as excellent as he has been, and as much as we expect him to be, the third coming of Gretzky, right? Like, I don't know. It's just so hard for me to see. Like, I'm so trepidatious. Like, I see this ADP of 52 and 41 respectively for Bedard, and I'm like, I would never, dude. I would never ever pick him in this range. Like ever. I wouldn't even go close to it. We're talking about any rookie, even this rookie, right? Like I'm just so shocked at the ADP, and like I'm stoked to get Jones past 100, and I think there's value with Hall, and I think there's a real sleeper option with Radish, but man, like I don't see how you get a return on your money with Bedard. Like, how does he last the season being the only viable one on the ice? Like, every defensive game plan is going to be specifically against him in a league he's never been in. Like, man, am I the only person on the planet that's super skeptical of this? Like, everyone else believes, and I feel like I'm going crazy.
I've heard some skepticism, but I mean, this guy is. I don't think we've seen a talent like this since McDavid or Matthews. But even McDavid's production, if he had stayed healthy for the whole season, would have been probably over a point. I think he was over a point per game.
Yeah, close to.
Matthews only had 60 something points in his first season. He had 40 goals, but it was like 67 points or something like that. So yeah, I mean, you're expecting Bedard to be better than Matthews was in his first year, and he showed out really well. But I think that I still think that he's probably a 70-point guy this year. I think that's kind of where I am. That's kind of where I'm expecting him to be. I look at the 80, 90, and I think that's a little rich. And also, I think these ADPs are a little rich as well. So let's dive into some value for these guys, or try and identify our favorite players on this team in terms of value. So Connor Bedard, Nate's got him for 40 goals, 71 points, 287 shots. So really high volume shooter, which isn't surprising to me. Like I think that his shot is one of his one of his weapons. Like a lot of people are saying, like he may come into the league and have one of the best shots in the league in his rookie year. So I've seen him shoot. It is pretty ridiculous. It's very Austin Matthews-esque with that little like quick toe drag type little quick pull to get out of the defender's way and get the shot on goal. Like it's clear that he's been watching Matthews and has kind of emulated that shot a little bit, because I've never seen a shot like that before. And then Blake's got him for 34 goals, 79 points, and 232 shots. So a high efficiency and more assists. And then his ADP is 52.31 in Fantrax, which puts that's in the 5th round, approximately, early 5th round. I do think that's a little bit rich for me. I'd probably take him maybe in the 6th, where I think banking on his upside, I'm willing to risk or take a risk on Bedard's upside just because it's so high. Seth Jones, Nate's got him for 11 goals, 49 points. He's got really nice peripherals. Blake's got him for 13 goals, 53 points. And his ADP in Fantrax is 112.05. So I like that a lot. I've talked about it on stream. I think I talked about it in the mock draft I did with Blake. I really like Seth Jones, and I really like him at that spot. I think he has the potential to really show out this year, because he's going to play a lot. Their defense is still real bad, and he's going to play in every situation. So Taylor Hall, Nate's got him for 23 goals, 50 points. Blake's got him for 27 goals, 61 points. His ADP in Fantrax right now is 155. I like that. I like that for Taylor Hall. I think he's going to get a ton of ice time, probably more than he's had since probably he played in New Jersey. So, I like that projection for Taylor Hall. Lucas Reichel, Nate's got him for 21 goals, 47 points. Blake's got him for 25 and 53. ADP is 212.58, so kind of going at the end of your draft. So he's a guy that I would potentially take a stab on, just because I think he's going to get really nice deployment, top line, top power play, likely playing with Bedard all the way through. If he doesn't, then you just drop him because you're getting him at the end of your draft. There's not really a ton of risk involved there. And then Tyler Johnson, Nate's got him for 18 goals, 42 points. Blake did not project him. His ADP, I mean, he's not being drafted. I think he was worth noting just because he has been more productive in limited time than people have noticed. Like, I think people forget about Tyler Johnson, but he still exists. He's on the Blackhawks, and that's why people aren't really paying attention. And then I have a note here. There's potential for Athanasiou or Corey Perry to play on power play 1. I think that 4th forward spot is kind of up in the air, where I put Taylor Radish. I think Corey Perry, it's possible you put him as a net front guy. So maybe there's some streamer value there when Chicago's having a good week. I just still don't think I'm drafting Perry because he's going to play on the 4th line, and his production's been not very good for a long time. So I mean, what do you think? Who is your value pick here?
The value pick for me has to be Jones. I think that's immense value for a power play quarterback who's going to eat minutes and just take a buttload of shots. Yeah. I think the prospectus of 200 plus shots is right in line, and that's beautiful. Like, you're going to get decent perimeters. He's going to eat minutes. I think that's an immense value. I don't think it really matters who that 4th forward is on the power play unless it's Radish, and then you're going to get a serious bump in value. Athanasiou is probably going to be somebody's sleeper pick at the end of your draft. He's not going to be mine. Nobody's going to be picking Perry. I think Reichel is an excellent sleeper that you've got listed here. Like, the talent level is massive, right? Like, he's like in the wash of Bedard. He's been totally lost, like you alluded to with Tyler Johnson, but he really seriously has the talent to hit that level and be one of the premier players on this team. I don't know if that's this year, right? Like, he's probably going to be an also ran and collect points alongside Bedard and Jones, much in the format of Hall. So, like, him versus Hall, I would much rather have Reichel on my team, because you're going to have to pay to draft Hall, and and you're really not going to have to pay to draft Reichel or even like pick him up off your waiver wire. So.
Yeah, and I think his upside is higher as well. Like if he shows out, I think he'll perform better than Taylor Hall. He's my sleeper. So I think he's one of the top prospects according to Dauber prospects. And like I said, likely going to play with Bedard in all situations. In terms of punts, in terms of the people being drafted, I don't think I'm punting anybody. Like, are you punting any of these guys? Maybe Bedard. You're thinking you're not going to take a risk on Bedard.
I view Bedard as a punt at his ADP. If it's 25 picks later, then I'm totally fine with it. Right? Like, I think there is certainly value to be had there, but I think he is absolutely going to get dummied. I think every single team is going to go out on the ice and send every possible line at him all the time. And I think a lot of the time that he's going to be forced to defer, and like as much as you can dance and shoot, it's going to have to happen all game, all season long. And I just don't know if he has the durability, the tenure to be able to do it at the NHL right off the bat. So I have my doubts.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's an unfair opinion. And then last year, our punt was Jonathan Toews, and I think we were right about that. And then last year, our sleeper was on Athanasiou. And he had a relatively productive year. Considering the situation
for being a Blackhawk,
yeah, but he was really a streamer. I don't think either of us really expected him to pop, but I thought he was going to have opportunity to play a ton, and he did.
He was rosterable. I think that's noteworthy. Yeah,
for sure. The Colorado Avalanche, they were first in the Central last year, despite all of their injury troubles. Really good team in terms of Corsi for percentage, expected goals for, scoring chances for. Their 5v5 save percentage last year was second in the league, 921. Their shooting percentage was actually 21st, so they were not converting a ton 5v5, although their power play was sixth. So actually, I have a note here saying that when I looked at start share percentage, the top 5 goalies in the league in terms of games started are all in the Central Division. So your volume starters, a lot of them are coming from this division. So we're going to talk a lot about these guys. Most of them are going early in the draft. So I personally am not going to be drafting them. I don't think Binksy probably will be either. But let's talk about Alex Georgiev. So he had a 76% start share last year. He had a 930 5v5 save percentage, so really, really good. His ADP is 69.85. Nice. And then Pavel Francouz, despite his injury troubles, had a 924 5v5 save percentage. I still think that they're going to rely heavily on Georgiev, but Francouz, still a viable spot start option. I think Colorado is just going to be a good team next year. So, are you drafting Georgiev, or are you waiting a little longer?
No, I'll be waiting much longer. Even if I were going with a goalie where he is going, that's way too soon for me. And that is really a testament to a 0G strategy, because I really believe in Georgiev. I was a huge fan of him in New York. I thought he moved to an excellent situation, and they got him at a steal. But as good as he is 5v5, like, he got decimated on the penalty kill last year. So they're going to have some trouble again in that regard, I think.
All right. So in terms of their lines, their top 6 is shaking out. They added a little bit of depth yesterday, actually, in getting Thomas Tatar. Not really sure where he's going to play in the lineup, but right now Daily Faceoff has Drouin, McKinnon, Rantanen as the top line, Lehkonen, Johansson, Nichushkin as the second line. I think the second line, that is probably how it's going to shake out. The Drouin spot, I think he'll probably start with McKinnon. I don't think he's going to stay there. I think the addition of Tatar kind of kiboshes the whole. It definitely will restrict the potential upside of Ross Colton, in my opinion. Like,
Mhm.
because I think there's another option to move up the lineup if Drouin doesn't work out, which I'm not expecting it to. So I don't know. We'll see what happens there. Obviously, I think their opinion of Colton is high, but yeah, there's just a little bit more depth that could potentially supplant him if an injury happens or if Drouin doesn't work out. So does that seem about right to you, Binksy?
It does. I mean, you add Tatar, who played with Miles Wood, right? Like, there's better continuity. They're deeper, which they really really needed after losing some serious depth pieces, right? I'm
Yeah.
really not as high on Colton as the fantasy community is. Nate and Blake are. Both of them got him pegged for 26 goals. Nate with 50 points, Blake with 56. Like, it's really wild to me that they see, a relative 20-point jump for him. Like, sure, he's all but guaranteed to get a bump in his time on ice. Because like, who else do they have at center for the bottom six? But like, how much more than Newhook got, right? Like, we're talking about
Yeah.
like a 12-minute player versus like a 13-minute player. And, yeah, like, Comfort's gone. They brought in Johansson, but I just I like the defensive side of his game. He's going to be a really solid addition for them as a defensive center, but as a fantasy asset, like, I don't see a 20-point jump for that. And maybe that's fine to bet on in an ADP of 230, but I'm not super excited about Colton unless it's in a bangers format, and really unless you're especially concerned about injury history with McKinnon and Johansson. Now, if they get injured and that changes and he's eating 15, 16 minutes, maybe that's baked into the prospectus here, but I have concerns about that. I don't think I'm alone in this. I don't really believe that Drouin is just the automatic option, right?
Yeah.
At first line left wing. Like,
Yep.
maybe it's Tatar, maybe it's Lehkonen, maybe they move up Miles Wood. Like, I think there's a lot of possibility there, and any one of those guys that you draft could be a quote unquote sleeper for you. But the question marks push Lehkonen up for me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still pretty high on Lekin, and I think they are as well. I think he probably sticks in the top 6. Your thoughts about Ross Colton? I think he is a higher efficiency player than Alex Newhook. Like, I like him a lot more. But yeah, in terms of opportunity, I just don't. I'm not sure that it's going to be there unless there's a ton of injuries like there was last year in Colorado, which is very possible.
Very possible.
McKinnon, Rantanen, Nichushkin, Lekin, and Makar. I think that's kind of a locked-in PP1 for them. What do you think?
Oh, I don't think there's a question. I think that's something that's been wildly successful there for them, and they have zero reason to change.
All right, let's find some value here. Nate McKinnon. He's being drafted in the top 4 pretty consistently. Nate's got him for 46 goals, 117 points, and 399 shots. Blake's got him for 49 goals, 120 points, 412 shots. What a soggy boy. He is the ultimate soggy boy. Love Nate McKinnon. I think you're probably getting decent value, especially if you see him fall to 4, which happens a bit. I think getting him at 4 is the ultimate value, and that's probably the lowest you're going to get Nate McKinnon. But I think that's really nice value regardless. Mikko Rantanen, his ADP is 6.19. Nate's got him for 45 goals, 104 points. Blake's got him for 53 goals, 106 points. He's another guy that falls a little bit too. So you could get him at value. 6 is probably about right for me. 6, 7, 8 in that range. But if he falls any further than that, snatch that guy up. He's a nice, safe first round pick. Cale Makar, his ADP is 14.19. Nate's got him for 24 goals, 87 points. Blake's got him for 25 goals, 90 points. If he stays healthy, he's going to be incredible. And getting him at the end of the first round, that's pretty consistently where I've been seeing him go in drafts, and that ADP kind of shows that. I do think that that's probably good value for for Cale Makar. Nichushkin, Nate's got him for 30 goals, 70 points. Blake's got him for 35 and 75. His ADP is 90.45. Great value for Nichushkin, in my opinion. I think he has a pretty high ceiling. Lehkonen, Nate's got him for 28 goals, 68 points. Blake's got him for 25 and 69. Nice. His ADP is 149.77. In terms of those projections, his point total's not much less than Nichushkin, but his ADP considerably less. Like about
Considerably
60
less.
places later. I'm surprised that Lehkonen is not being he's being drafted not much higher than he was last year when he was our big sleeper. So I still really like Lehkonen. I think he's probably my pick in terms of value here. But let's talk about a couple more guys. Devon Taves, Nate's got over 12 goals, 56 points. His ADP is 127.56. And then Ross Colton, obviously you mentioned Nate and Blake are really high on him. They both got him for 26 goals. Nate's got him for 50 points. Blake's got him for 56. His ADP is 230.11. I think he's probably a watch list guy for me, just until we kind of see how the lineup shakes out. But I actually have him as my sleeper as well, because there is some pretty good potential there. So who is your value pick, first of all? Mine is Arturi Lehkonen for sure. Do you agree, or do you have someone else?
No, 100%. Lehkonen at an average ADP of almost 150 is excellent, and that's probably like bolstered by about 20 spots versus Nichushkin based on value above replacement at their respective wings, right? And that's like sort of understandable, but I'm much happier having Lehkonen at 150 versus Nichushkin at 90.
So my punt is Jonathan Drouin. Like we mentioned, not really. I just don't like his production. It sucks. Like I'm rooting for the guy. I hope that it works out for him, but I just don't believe it at all. And I just think you're going to see a very similar situation to what you saw in Montreal, where he starts high in the lineup and just very quickly just kind of falls down the depth chart. So last year our punt was JT Compher. He ended up being pretty productive and probably hitting his offensive ceiling, although not like the most fantasy relevant player in the world. But because of the opportunity, because of all the injuries, he was pretty productive and rosterable at times, especially late in the year when Colorado had a crazy schedule. So we may have been wrong about that, but who is your punt?
The punt for me has to be Drouin. Like, it's kind of a polar opposite with a very similar narrative with Connor Brown, right? It's just kind of like narrative wise, it's defaulted that you're going to play this wing because this is the open spot that we have and you're the new guy. And that's why we brought you in. Right. And I just don't see it with Drouin. Like, there's a lot of stuff in his history where he wasn't necessarily mentally strong. Right. And in this case, with these stars, they're going to need somebody who's mentally strong. And it's honestly shocking to me that at this point that they haven't just made Lehkonen the number one left winger for them. Like, as excited as they were to bring him in, as much praise as they brought in, as successful as he was in spurts last year, I just don't see it being a cemented Drouin position. And I think he's going to drop out of favor really, really quickly.
So I mentioned my sleeper was Ross Colton. I think his ceiling probably isn't super high, just because I don't think he's going to get a ton of ice time. But I mean, his ceiling is probably about 55 points, but that's still fantasy relevant at the bottom of your lineup. But there is potential for him to move up with injury. Last year we said Arturi Lehkonen for our sleeper, which I think was a good pick. Who is your sleeper this year, Binksy?
I don't know that you can call him a sleeper for like years in a row, but Bowen Byram has all of the talent in the world, and they're just like this much less talented all the way down in Colorado. So, barring injury, which has been like his tagline across his career at this point, barring injury, I think that it's really, really possible that he has a 50-point plus season if he plays a full 82, and that's a big question mark. But I feel like as a really like true like dyed in the wool sleeper, that you can get really immense value from Byram, and I really believe in the talent level, and even more so in a bangers format.
Yeah, I love Bowen Byram as well. I totally support that choice. All right, let's move on to the Dallas Stars, my friend. I'm surprised you're not wearing a Stars jersey today.
I couldn't do it. I got 10 Star sweaters. When do I get to wear a PK Subban sweater? You know?
Fair, very fair, very fair. They were second in the Central last year. I think they're probably a favorite to win the division this year. They were awesome. They were awesome in almost all categories. Their 5v5 save percentage was really good. Shooting percentage was pretty good, which maybe there's a bit of regression 5v5. But in terms of their power play was fifth in the league. And they had a middle of the pack shooting percentage and produced a ton in terms of expected goals for and scoring chances for. So pretty reproducible in terms of their power play production. So I like their power play a ton. Jake Ottinger. Let's talk about goalies. Jake Ottinger, 74% start share in 2023. He was one of the tops in the league in terms of starts last year. His ADP is 63.38. 5v5, his save percentage was 927. Scott Wedgwood, the backup in limited time, 5v5 save percentage 926. So really very comparable across the board. So they had really solid goaltending last year. What do you think, Binksy? Are you taking your boy Jake, or are you waiting?
No, I'm gonna wait. But at that kind of second tier of goalie, he sits right at the top of it for me. Um, I've talked about it on the podcast before. The biggest concern for me is that he's going to be overworked and kind of be a detriment to your roster towards playoff time. The 74% start share is a little bit skewed considering that Wedgwood wasn't always healthy last year, right? So there were some weeks where Otter probably should have taken that game off and just couldn't, right? Because Wedgwood was slated to be back in 7 days or 10 days or et cetera. And he just kind of kept going. And that really reared its ugly head towards the end of the season and into the playoffs for the Stars. So I would expect that that's a better balance, especially considering how Scott Wedgwood played throughout the season. Like they believed enough to bring him in rather than go to a proven veteran backup somewhere else. And he played well, if not all of the time. So I'm not all in on Otter in a way that would force me to take a goalie that early. But if I were, Otter would be the one. They are a really, really sound defensive team, and they're going to control the puck. And Otter is a burgeoning star in net. So I'm behind. If that's when you want to take a goalie at 63, then I'm absolutely behind you taking Otter.
All right, let's look at 5v5. You could pretty much talk about the top 9 in Dallas as opposed to the top 6 just because they have so much offensive depth. But top line obviously is going to be Robertson, Hids, Pavelski. They've been one of the best lines in the NHL the last 2 years. I don't think that's changing anytime soon. Line 2 on daily faceoff, they've got Jamie Benn, Wyatt Johnston, and Evgeny Dodonov. Does that seem about right, Binksy?
Honestly, I really don't know what to think. Like, that was a successful line for them in the playoffs, and I assume that that's what DFO is going off of because bringing in Duchesne has so many question marks. Like, obviously, he's not going to line 1 unless there's an injury, but there's every possibility that they break camp and it's Sagan, Ben, Duchesne, or it's Marchment, Johnson, Ben, or it's like that second level on the team could be anyone. And
Pretty interchangeable. Yeah.
no one is betting on Marchment at this point, and a lot of people have Duchesne up and Sagan down. And I think the only thing that you can really, really depend on from this tier on the Stars is that Wyatt Johnson is going to be as good as he was last year, and Jamie Benn is going to be as good as he was last year. Like,
Ooh.
Duchesne could be way better. He could be worse. He could really return to the 3-year average rather than somewhere between the last two seasons. Sagan could jump up 15 points, or he could be relegated to the third line and never sniff the power play. Like, there are a ton of question marks, and I really completely understand the ADPs where they are right now, and I really feel fine drafting any of them because all of them, like from Robertson all the way down to the bottom of the barrel with a team, like with Marchment, I could see it going well. Like, I could see any range of outcome and any of these players being great, and I think it's going to take injury to really know exactly what that is throughout the season. Like, unless they break camp and they go through the season and you see the exact same lines for 3 weeks in a row, I think we just don't know. I think it's just pure guesses right now.
In terms of their power play, I mean, it stayed the same most of the year last year. Robertson, Hintz, Pavelski, Benn, Heiskanen. I think that's probably what they're going with this year, just because they had so much success. Any arguments there?
I don't know how I can argue with it. It was so successful.
Yeah.
I think it's possible that Ben comes off and Duchesne goes on if there's a hot streak to start the beginning of the season. But I don't think it's Sagan. I think that experiment is over. And I don't think it's Wyatt Johnson. I don't think they want to impress that pressure on him, considering how well he's played to the demand thus far. So I think it's possible that Duchesne gets that power play one time, but I don't think there's any guarantees.
All right, let's find some value with these top guys. So Jason Robertson, his ADP is 9.77. He's kind of solidified himself as a top first round player. Probably more the back half of the first round, but yeah, I mean, that ADP is that's what it shows. So Nate's got him for 46 goals, 104 points. Blake's got him for 48 and 107. He's going to get a ton of power play points. He's going to get a ton of shots. Great player. I think that's probably about where you should be drafting Robertson. Rupe Hintz, Nate's got him for 37 goals, 88 points. Blake's got him for 44 goals, 89 points. Baby dry. His ADP is 40.04. Yeah, I mean, that's a good spot for Hintz. I think the secret's out. He's a fantastic player. He's a great high efficiency player. And he's gonna perform. Joe Pavelski, this is an interesting one. Nate's got him for 27 goals, 70 points. Blake's got him for 31 goals, 75 points. His ADP, 85.87. Now, if you think that he's going to decline because of age, it hasn't seemed to be happening. But maybe that's why his ADP is so low. But I think that's pretty good value for Joe Pavelski if he is getting just below a point per game. He gets pretty good peripherals. He gets over a hit per game for the most part. I mean, I like him a lot too. So I don't know. What do you think? What do you think there? I actually let's go through the rest and then I'll get your thoughts. Miro Heiskanen, Nate's got him for 13 goals, 70 points. Blake's got him for 14 and 73. His ADP is 35.6. Secrets out about Heiskanen as well. He busted it out. You're not getting him at value anymore. I think you're getting him right where he should be. I've seen a lot of people reach for him as well. I think people are pretty high on Heiskanen, and they should be. Jamie Benn, Nate's got him for 24 goals, 57 points. Blake's got him 27 goals, 61 points. ADP 147.74. People aren't believing that he's going to get a point per game again next year, and that's probably that's probably a safe bet. So that ADP I think makes sense for Jamie Benn as well. And then we've got Duchesne at 177.08, Sagan at 224.78. Nate and Blake have them both for around 50 points. And then Wyatt Johnston, Nate's got him for 47 points. Blake's got him for 48. His ADP is 227.81. So that may be some pretty good value just because Johnston has a pretty high ceiling. His upside's really high and he's really young. So if you think he's going to bust out, that could be a good spot to get him as well. So I think my value pick is probably Joe Pavelski at the ADP that he's going at. What do you think, man? What are you feeling?
I have my concerns about Pavelski being able to stay healthy throughout the season. Not necessarily that his age is going to translate into a decline in his production, but that he's just simply going to play less games, right? Like they are so deep. And even if he is not out of the lineup injured, if he's a bit banged up, I think they have a good enough team that he takes a few games off here and there. And that doesn't strike me as Captain America Joe Pavelski, but we're also talking about a Joe Pavelski that wants to win a cup, right? Like wants to win a cup, and this is a team that absolutely can do it. So I have my concerns about his ability to consistently play at a maximum level throughout the season. So with that said, I think any one of the players that we mentioned, wherever you're taking them at these ADPs, I think the upside is absolutely there. I think the possibility that they pay off for you and or pay off for you in spades is completely viable. Like I say this as a Stars homer, like I so truly believe in this team. Like as long as we can like corral Suter and not let him screw us in the playoffs, like I think the sky is the limit for the Stars. And not only that, fantasy wise, the sky is the limit for these players. Like any one of them has a floor of 60 points. And a lot of them have a very achievable ceiling of 70 points. So I'm earnestly excited about it top to bottom.
So punts and sleepers are interesting in this case. So last year, we'll talk about last year first. Our punt last year was Jamie Benn, and we couldn't have been more wrong about that. Our sleeper last year was Mason Marchment, and we also couldn't have been more wrong about that. He didn't play super well. I think Ben was, I mean, it was the Benaissance last year. So and then Mason Marchment started well and just kind of got lost in the shuffle. Had a long stretch without scoring, and I think just really couldn't get out of it. So this year, so we'll talk about so my sleeper's Wyatt Johnston. We'll talk about that. I kind of talked about his upside. He's another guy that I think you can take a swing on at the end of your draft without a whole lot of risk. And he's going to get a ton of opportunity there, at least at 5v5. So my punt is interesting because my punt is actually your sleeper. So my punt is Matt Duchene. And your sleeper's Matt Duchene. So why don't you talk a little bit about what you feel about Duchene? Because I feel like he's kind of like a supplementary piece here. He's going to not get a ton of ice time. He's not going to get a power play opportunity, which I think really hurts his value because he, is typically on power play one everywhere he is.
Right.
But what is your thought about Duchene? Why do you think he's a sleeper?
So we're talking about a player with a point per game pedigree when he plays alongside an absolute like point producer, right? At least 60 points. 60 points is an easy floor for him as a player. He is on a 1-year prove it deal. He is, I think, 34 years old. This is going to be his last contract, right? He also wanting to play deep in the playoffs. The player in front of him at his position is 39 years old. Okay. The player on the power play in front of him is Jamie Benn, who was our punt last year, even though he's the captain. And I love Jamie Benn, right? Nobody saw that coming, right? So as much as the incoming free agency has inflated his ADP, I think the possibility that he returns to 75 points is really, really, really there, right? No matter if it's second line and he's the one getting the top power play minutes, no matter if it's injury opening pushes him to the top line, because nobody else is going to play the right wing on the top line if Pavelski is not there, right? They're not going to bring up Stankoven to do that, right? Like there's not another player on the roster. Like Dodonov's not a top line player. That's not going to happen. They brought in Duchesne, I think, as that insurance. That's what makes sense to me. And I think that there are no givens with this second tier of the Stars, but the most likely outcome, given all of the variables, for a player to explode out of their value from Ben, Duchesne, Sagan, Johnston, Marchment, etc., has to be Duchesne. Like there are so many outlets for him to outplay his value, and the other guys are all kind of dependent on something happening, right? But there are a lot of different like lanes for him to make that break, and we've seen him be that successful. And for a player in the last leg of his contract, this is the year that he needs to get it done. And I'm a Duchesne believer, and I was stoked to get him on the Stars. Like I don't feel like it's a name only buy-in for the Stars.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there is some value there for Duchesne. I think yeah, I mean, you would know better than I would, but in terms of the way that they're probably going to be utilized. But you're right about the fact that that middle six is pretty interchangeable. So I mean, it's very likely that he'll get a good opportunity. Minnesota, let's move on. They are third, or they were third in the Central last year. They're a really weird team because they really got outplayed in a lot of their team categories in terms of shot and chance generation in basically every game. But then their 5v5 save percentage was third in the league. So their goaltending was awesome. And their shooting percentage was 26th. So not only were they getting outplayed, but they weren't converting on their chances either. So their goalies really bailed them out, at least at 5v5. They had a 15th ranked power play, although they were top 5 in chance generation on the power play, but bottom 3rd in power play shooting percentage. So, I mean, they have a pretty top heavy offense and a really solid power play 1 that looks like it's going to have some positive regression next year as a unit. So that's really interesting for Minnesota. In terms of their goalies, Philip Gustafson had a 939 save percentage at 5v5 last year. Just outstanding breakout season for Gustafson. Marc-Andre Fleury had a 921, so also really solid, but he kind of has fallen down the depth chart a little bit. Gustafson's ADP is 140.94. Fleury's is 224.04. So in my opinion, like people are really high on Philip Gustafson, and like I definitely am too. But I don't know that he's going to get enough starts to warrant being picked where he's being picked, at least amongst all of the other goaltenders. So I feel like Fleury is actually a really nice 0G candidate this year.
Huge value. I mean,
yeah,
people are drafting Gustafson like he was the one that got 8 more of the starts last year when they both played really well, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were nearly 50-50 in terms of their start share. So it's just at the end, Gustafson kind of pulled away because he was playing better down the stretch. But yeah, I just don't know that that's going to be the case this year. So yeah, I think they're a little higher on Gustafson, but I still think Fleury has a ton of value. So all right, let's dive into their offense. So their top 6 shakes out like this on daily faceoff. They got Kaprizov, Hartman, Zuccarello, which is kind of their top line for the last few years. And then Boldy, Eriksson Ek, and Johansson as a second line. Marco Rossi, I think, is going to make the lineup again this year. Will he produce? We'll see. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But what do you think about that top 6 there, Binksy? The top line looks nice. Second line, you wish Boldy had some more players to play with, but I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think that's the way it's going to shake out?
I think it is exactly what we expect it to be with their top six. I really hope Marco Rossi comes out firing like we really hoped that he would last year. The more I dug into it last year, as he faltered, even with the expectations and their kind of bond in the minors, the more I looked into the stats for a player of his stature, I had a lot more question marks, right? So um, I'm like way less confident in Rossi's ability to jump up to the NHL level and meet with Boldy. So for me, Boldy's value is really dependent on him getting that top line. I'm way more comfortable getting Zuccarello like much later in the draft and like
Yeah.
this just kind of taking that value to the bank at the wing. And for where Kaprizov is going, I like other players a lot more. I like Tage Thompson. I like Jason Robertson. I like Kucherov in some drafts if he's still there. I mean, there are even parts of me that would like rather have Ovechkin, right? Like as good as they were on the power play, they're missing a lot as a team, and you really don't even know how to cement their power play, right? Like all the way through. So I have a lot of doubts about Minnesota's ability to continue that power play success. And maybe that's just the Stars fan in me hating on them after a really like vitriolic series last year. Um, but yeah, like I see Boldy being overdrafted. I'm not super comfortable with Kirill Kaprizov where he's going, even though I think he's an immense talent. Like what I want from this team is like pure value above replacement, like pure Z score. And I have been getting it from Zuccarello, and I have been getting it from Addison in places where I'm willing to take that shot. But otherwise, like I've really been straying away from pretty much everybody on this team, with exception to Fleury as a 0G candidate.
All right, let's find some value in this offense here. So Kaprizov, like you mentioned, his ADP is 13.89. So getting picked right at the end of the first round on average. Or I guess early second round. Nate has him for 51 goals, 109 points, 37 power play points. Blake's got him for 53 goals, 104 points, and 40 power play points. Just outstanding projections for Kaprizov. I think he's got to be my value pick here. Like, I think he's getting picked way too low. I had him in my top 6 last year in terms of fantasy projections, or I mean, yeah, in terms of where my rankings where I was picking him. And I just don't. I think he's gonna show out again. Like I really am stoked about Kaprizov. So I like that value for him. Zuccarello also a really good value pick. Nate's got him for 28 goals, 82 points. Blake's got him for 24 and 73. His ADP is 122.26. So I do agree with you. I think that is outstanding value for Zuccarello, although he's another guy like Pavelski, where you worry about his age. But I just don't think that there's a lot of competition at right wing specifically. I think Boldy is better suited at the left. So, and then Matt Boldy, Nate's got him for 37 goals, 80 points. Blake's got him at 35 and 79. His ADP is 81.55. I mean, I do really like Matt Boldy, but I think I do prefer Zuccarello at a lower ADP, knowing that he's more likely to play on the top line with Kaprizov. And then Joel Eriksson-Ek, I think he's kind of an underrated player. Nate's got him for 26 goals, 60 points. Blake's got him for 30 goals and 68 points. He gets a ton of shots and a ton of hits, and shot at a really low percentage last year. So I think there's room for improvement there. His ADP is 116.86. He is a center only guy. So if you're fading centers, I think he's a pretty good option at that point in the draft. And I've seen him fall quite a bit lower than that too. So I actually am pretty high on Eriksson-Ek. He does play on the top power play too, for the most part. So I like that spot as well. And then their power play quarterback, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Spurgeon? Is it going to be Addison? Nate and Blake think it's going to be Spurgeon. Nate's got him at 13 goals, 45 points. Blake's got him at 12 and 41. His ADP is 192.18. You and I disagree, and we're aligned on that. I think Kalen Addison's going to get another opportunity here. Although his defense is leaves a lot to be desired. I think he is probably one of the better offensive options there. I understand why there's question marks, but I think he's going to get an opportunity there. So that definitely kind of decreases Spurgeon's value a little bit if he's not playing on PP1. So am I taking Addison? Am I drafting him? I mean, maybe if I need a D really late in the draft and he's still there, he's probably one of the last power play quarterbacks that I would draft. But I think he's still got some value and isn't being drafted very high. So what's your thought on that? I think we're aligned on that take.
I am absolutely in agreement with that. Like the splits for Kalen Addison, pretty extreme. Like much better at home, much better against the West, and kind of what that says to me on a surface level is that we're talking about a young guy who had really high expectations impressed upon him on a very successful power play, right? Where I think he was trying to do a little bit too much, and Dean Everson recognized that and took that responsibility away from him. But they didn't kick him off the team, right? They didn't boot him down the lineup. They just took him off the power play. He was still getting plenty of minutes. Like, they don't have a lot else to go to. I think it's pretty clear that Spurgeon isn't the answer for them as a power play quarterback. And the ability to get Addison so late in your draft as what I think is a really good chance, not concrete, but a really good chance to get a power play quarterback on what should, again, be a successful power play, it presents immense value to me. Like the consensus is so down on Addison that I think you're going to get really, really good value on him if he gets to the place where you and I think he can be.
So my favorite value pick is Kaprizov. I think you disagree there. So who's your favorite value pick here?
The value pick for me has to be Zuccarello at 122 on the right wing, playing with a top point getter on the league. And hopefully at some point, Matt Boldy, who can also be a top point getter in the league at some point in his career. I think the value there that you're going to get at right wing is not going to be super commonplace past 110, right? Like it dries up pretty hard right around that marker. So to be able to get him at 115 plus feels really, really good to me. And I think sleeper applies to everyone pretty much not named Kirill or Matt on this team. And, in a banger, give me Eriksson Ek, but you're really not going to have to pay very much for him as a center. And in a banger format, I think that could present an immense value. So it kind of depends on the format for me, who I believe in most to kind of emerge from the shadows here. But just if I had to underline one of them, give me Zuccarello.
So in terms of punts and sleepers for me, last year I said Ryan Hartman, you should be punting him. Binksy disagreed. I think you were right about that. They still are pretty high.
Right. I think we were both right,
know,
depending on which part of the season you looked at.
But I mean, yeah, he was injured, and it was a bit of a weird season for him. But it's clear that he still is going to get that deployment with Kaprizov 5v5. There's just no center depth there on this team at all. I mean, yeah, I guess I'm leaning a little bit towards Spurgeon, but his ADP isn't super high, so like I think he still produces even if he's not playing on the power play. Enough that I'm still pretty comfortable taking him around 200. So, I guess I'm not sure that I'm really punting anyone on this team.
I think maybe given the 0G like highlight that it might be
Gustafsson.
A little bit of a cop out for me, but the punt for me has to be Gustafsson. Like I think there's a good a chance as any that Fleury is the guy on this team. And you're getting Fleury at like last round value. So the punt for me has to be Gustafsson. But if we're talking about purely about skaters, I'm going to go ahead and punt Voldy at 81. That seems a little bit rich for me with no guarantees. Although I really, really believe in the player himself, and if that situation changes, then we're going to look back on this next year, and I'll be super wrong about that.
Our sleeper last year was Rossi. I'm going to go with Marco Rossi again, although I do really like Joel Eriksson-Ek to have a bit of positive regression in terms of his shooting percentage, and I like his situation. Marco Rossi, I mean, it's going to be hard for him to play with good players, and I think that's going to be the key for him to have success in the NHL. But like, he's still a really high pedigree player. He's had really tough development years, just getting really sick from COVID and having myocarditis, and just really kind of stunted his development a little bit. But he was still, like, when he played last year, he was nearly a point per game in the AHL. So there's certainly value there for Marco Rossi. I just don't know that he's going to play in a good spot in the lineup. And last year when he did play, they had him really low in the lineup and just weren't giving him opportunities in the top 6. And that's just not going to fly. Like, he's not going to be able to do it on his own. So, yeah, I mean, I still think that he's a potential guy that you should put on your watch list, because I think he'll probably make the lineup. But yeah, I'm a little worried about the potential opportunity for him there. Let's move on to Nashville. So, I mean, obviously not a lot of fantasy options here. They've gone through a lot of changes. They were 5th in the Central last year. Were really not very good, other than their goaltending was fantastic. Shooting percentage was really low too, so maybe there's some positive regression coming there. They kind of were the anti Nashville Predators of the previous year, where they had a crazy high shooting percentage. And then their power play was really bad as well, as 27th in the league. So UC Saros had a 77% start share in 2023. I believe he led the league in games started. It may have been Hellebuck. They're usually the top 2. His ADP is 58.14. He had a 928 5v5 save percentage. And then Kevin Lankinen actually had a 921 5v5 save percentage. They're bringing him back as their backup. And he played pretty well when he was in the net. Their goaltending was not an issue. It was really everything else. So, yeah, I mean, are you drafting UC Saros, Binksy?
Good Lord. No. God. No. 58, 6th round? No. God, yeah. No.
Not on this team. I don't expect this team to have a ton of success next year. So that hurts Saros's value.
No, and to be starting almost 80% of the games on top of that, like, ooh, there's a lot not to like.
A lot of shot volume, though. I think he's going to make a lot of saves, and he'll play well. But there's definitely value. But yeah, I mean, as a guy that goes insanely 0G, he's not a guy I'm going to be drafting in any league. So in terms of the offense, it's pretty grim. The top line on daily faceoff, we got Philip Forsberg, Ryan O'Reilly, Gustav Nyquist as the top line, Guryanov, Novak, Evangelista as the second line. And then you got Parson and Glass, Tomasino on the third line. It's a young group outside of Ryan O'Reilly. But I don't know. It's pretty grim. What are you feeling about this offense here? Like, are there any high points? Actually, let's talk about the power play before we go to you. Okay. The first power play unit, I mean, on daily faceoff, it says Cody Glass, Novak, Philip Forsberg, Luke Evangelista, and Roman Josi. I imagine that you'll probably see Ryan O'Reilly on there. He'll get an opportunity, and he played pretty well on the Leafs power play last year, and still produces well. Nate talked about his power play production across his career. He's still doing pretty well there, even though a lot of other things have kind of tailed off for him. Yeah, what do you think about their offense, man? There's not a lot of options here.
I mean, you're gonna love having Josi on your team. I think post injury last year, where Forsberg was almost a leading scorer on the team with like sub 20. Like, he's going to come back healthy and he's going to eat minutes. He's going to put up points, but how many, right? Like that to me really depends on the team around him. And they're so young and so streaky across the talent that I have like I have nothing but question marks as to who it will be. Like it won't surprise me that throughout the season Nashville forwards will be on our ad list, right?
Yeah.
Like I think there will be a ton of streaming candidates based on who's hot at the moment, whether it's Novak, whether it's Glass, whether it's Evangelista. The Stars homer in me like really loves Gurionov, and I have seen him flash that same way. Like I think there could be stretches where Gurionov scores 5 goals in 5 games and then doesn't score for 6 weeks, right? Like
Yeah.
I think that that's going to be a really common theme across the Preds. So I don't know that I'm like putting a draft stamp on anyone. Thus far, the lotto ticket that I have taken at his ADP is Evangelista because at 293, he in that crowd of talented young will they players, he represents the best chance to me, and I've been doing that in best ball formats because I think that the the runway for him is the longest and the talent level is the highest among these players. But I don't think there's any guarantees, and I'm not comfortable betting on any of them really. Like I think it's going to be just a season full of like 5 game stretches from most of the players on this team.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right about that. There's a lot of guys that I would put on my watch list, but not a lot of guys that I'm drafting here. So there's 2 guys I think I would draft on the Nashville Predators. We'll dive into them right now. Let's look for some value. Roman Yossi, I love Roman Yossi. Nate's got him for 20 goals, 71 points. Blake's got him for 23 goals, 77 points. They both have him for 300 shots or more. That's the big thing for Roman Yossi. Just a huge shot generator. Just, I mean, way more than anyone else in the league in terms of defense. Cale Makar is up there, but Roman Yossi stands supreme in terms of shot generation for defensemen. His ADP is 20.13. I like that value for Roman Yossi going late second round. I'm pretty into that for him, even with the decrease in talent around him on the power play. Philip Forsberg is another guy I would definitely draft. Nate's got him for 34 goals, 72 points. Blake's got him for 33 and 71. There's some injury concern. His ADP is 66.69. So that's about 2 rounds later than you would be getting him in previous years. So I like that value for Philip Forsberg. I think he's probably my pick here in terms of value. Ryan O'Reilly, Nate's got him for 22 goals, 57 points. Blake's got him for 19 and 54. His ADP is 220.99. I'm not super high on O'Reilly. I'll elaborate a little bit more on that later. Tommy Novak, Nate's got him for 20 goals, 56 points. Blake's got him for 17 and 55. His ADP is 227.97. I think that's pretty decent value for Novak and like not a lot of risk late in the draft. And he's looked pretty solid. Luke Evangelista is the other guy I want to touch on. Nate's got him for 19 goals, 33 points. Blake's got him for 22 and 46. So quite a divide in terms of their projections. I think he has a pretty low floor, but a pretty high ceiling. So he's another guy. I think I agree with you that if I was going to bet on one of these young guys, it would probably be him. I looked at his underlying numbers. He was one of the better ones in terms of shot and chance generation. A little bit better than Novak, although Novak isn't really that type of player. He's not really a high volume shooter. I think Evangelista is probably the guy there, but my value pick is definitely Philip Forsberg where he's going. So what about you, Binksy? Is there a name that stands out here? Are you drafting any of these players?
I have found myself drafting Forsberg in quite a few places. I was talking about the same kind of situation with Blake in the most recent mock draft episode. But we were talking about rat face. I'm on very little sleep. I've forgotten his name. Brad Marchand. And the value he represented last year coming off an injury, right?
Yeah.
And the quality of player and where you were able to get them. And 66 feels like an immense value for such a point producer. And in that same episode, I talked about like my penchants to not usually go to the well with a top player on a bad team, but the value that you're going to get from Philip Forsberg at almost 67 is really really good, right? Like the possibility that he's a point per game player is really there, and he is going to get to play with Yossi. And I think Yossi is a fine pick at 20, but that doesn't really represent any value to me. And at 67, that's a really, really good value for Philip Forsberg. We're talking about, I want to say he was a third round player last year.
Yeah,
So
third to fourth. Yeah, for sure. And that's like the sixth. So
yeah,
I like
like
that a
that's,
lot for Forsberg.
and not really anything has changed for him except that Duchesne is gone. And that's not a huge loss. So, like, as excited as I am to have Duchesne in the Stars system, taking him out of Nashville doesn't really take that much away. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, nice Cats player too. He hits and he shoots. So I like Phil Forsberg a lot. My punt. So last year our punt was Tomasino. I think a lot of people were super hype about him, thinking he was going to get an opportunity in the top 6. We didn't believe it, and we were right. So small claps for Binksy and Hutch. And then my punt this year is Ryan O'Reilly. So obviously he's going to get the opportunity. He's going to have a leadership role here in Nashville. He's probably going to play on the power play. I just don't really like his generation. Like I don't like what he's been generating in prior years. I feel like his production has dipped considerably. He really does nothing peripherally. You think of him as like a gritty player, but he doesn't hit. He doesn't really shoot. Doesn't block a ton either, even though he's a defensive forward. So really, unless you're in a league with faceoff wins, because he's amazing at faceoffs, I'm not stoked about drafting O'Reilly even at 220. Like, I think at that point in the draft, I'm drafting guys with high upside, and I just don't think he has it. So I'm drafting guys like Lucas Reichel, who we talked about with Chicago, guys that have higher ceilings, and taking chances there instead of taking O'Reilly, where I just don't think that he's really going to show out here.
that is a phenomenal example of draft strategy right there. Like at
Yeah.
that point in the draft, those guys aren't going to hit your lineup except in extreme off like night situations, which they're going to be with the schedule coming this season. But like you don't want to bet on that. That's a waiver wire player. That's a streamer position. That's a guy you're excited to get in because his schedule is advantageous and the matchups are good. Not that
Yeah.
you want to invest in a draft position. I'm totally in agreement with that.
All right. And then our sleeper. Last year I said Nino Niederreiter. This year I'm saying Luke Evangelista. So we kind of already touched on that. I think we're on the same page in terms of Evangelista. If we had to, I don't think that he's like a major sleeper. Like, I don't think that I'm really drafting him at all. But if I had to pick one, that's probably who I'm picking.
Agreed. I
Yeah.
don't think we need to hammer it home. There's really really good talent there, and he's going to get the opportunity. So
yeah. All right, St. Louis. They were 6th in the Central last year. They were terrible in terms of they got caved basically in every game in terms of shots and chance generation. Their 5v5 save percentage was not very good as a team. It was 9-11, which was well below average in the league. Third highest shooting percentage in the league, though, which has become a trend for the St. Louis Blues. A really high efficiency team. They don't produce a lot, but they convert on their chances. Still didn't really help them a ton because they were still pretty bad. But their power play was 22nd in the league, still with a high shooting percentage, but their chance generation was terrible once again. So their power play, they're not really producing a ton either. I think they'd probably be better suited loading up one power play as opposed to kind of spreading the wealth as they've been doing in prior years. In terms of goaltending, Binnington last year had a 73% start share, and he had a 907 5v5 save percentage. His ADP this year is 216.98. So you can get him pretty easily if you feel like he's going to be a high volume starter. He probably will be, at least if you look at previous years. But then we got Joel Hofer, who's they're going to be their backup this year. Thomas Grace retired, so he won't be coming back. He was also terrible last year. But Joel Hofer got into 6 games at the end of the year and had a 955 5v5 save percentage, despite how bad the Blues were in front of him. He was awesome. He was a big guy that people were streaming in their fantasy playoffs. I know I did. He helped me win the Apples and Genos Patron League. Actually, he was a guy that I streamed in the last week in the finals. So Joel Hofer, I think, could potentially steal a starting spot this year. This is a guy that I think is a really good 0G candidate. Probably won't be drafted in most leagues, but a guy that you should be watching very carefully, because if Binnington falters at the start of the year, I don't think he's got a very long leash here. So I could see Hofer taking over the way that Husso did 2 years ago. Well, I don't know. What do you think about that goaltending situation in St. Louis, Binksy?
I think it is as true in any goaltending tandem in the league. It's Binnington's job to lose, right? Like after a playoff run like that, it's him. After all of that money that they paid him, it's him. But he has gotten worse and worse and worse and worse every single season. And as he gets worse, he gets more troublesome. He brings them bad press on top of bad press, on top of suspensions, on top of fights. Like, he hasn't done himself any favors, and Hofer has done nothing except quietly play really, really well in limited engagement, right? So I could see it going either way, like all season long. I could see Binnington fire out of the gate and be immensely successful and be that Binnington that we've all come to know and hate / love. Or I could see him lose 4 games in a row and Hofer take over and win 4 games in a row and it be a 70-30 split the other way. Like, I think it could be either, and that's totally fine because you're really not going to have to pay to draft either. Like, even Binnington at 217 in a lot of drafts, that's not even drafted. You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty deep. So there are a lot of other 0G candidates that I would draft instead of Binnington, but I think it's fine. Like, you're not going to have to pay any draft capital for him, and you're definitely not going to have to pay any draft capital for Joel Hofer.
One thing's for sure. One thing that I will say about Binnington is if your league counts fake punches per 60, I mean, he should be your first overall pick.
That one wasn't in the script either. You've got
all right. So in terms of their top 6 this year, I mean, they still have quite a bit of talent. Pavel Buchnevich, Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou on daily faceoffs, that's their top line. Those are their top 3 producers, for sure. Then they've got Brandon Saad, Braden Shen, and Kasperi Kapanen. Things really drop off after that. I'm not sure that Kasperi Kapanen's going to play on their second line. I think Jacob Vrana is probably a better option there. They've also got Kevin Hayes as a depth piece. Jake Neighbors will probably play a little bit more this year. He was kind of in and out of the lineup, but he's a young guy with a little bit of upside there. So, and then in terms of power play, I mentioned before, they kind of spread the wealth a little bit in previous years. I think they'd probably be better suited loading things up, but their most commonly used power play last year was, in terms of forwards, was Braden Shen, Kyrou, Buchnevich, Thomas. I think if you put Vrana in there instead of Braden Shen, and then put potentially Falk or I mean maybe Perunovic, who I'm pretty stoked on. I think that's a pretty solid top power play. So let's dive in and find some value with these forwards here, or at least with these skaters. So Pavel Buchnevich, Nate's got him for 28 goals, 79 points. Blake's got him for 27 goals, 85 points. His ADP is 90.85. I really like Pavel Buchnevich. He's struggled to stay healthy, but he is a pretty consistent producer, usually right around point per game, if not a little bit higher. He shot at a really high percentage last year in limited time. But I still think even if that shooting percentage regresses, he's still going to produce really well. And I like him at 90. I think that's great value for Buchnevich. Jordan Kyrou, Nate's got him for 36 goals, 74 points. Blake's got him for 38 and 78. His ADP is 61.67. I'm okay with that for Kyrou. I think that's probably around where he should be going. He's a really high shot producer. In Bangers Cats, he doesn't do a ton other than shots, power play points, goals, assists. I mean, that's still valuable, but his value kind of decreases because he literally doesn't hit at all. He's like single digit hits every year. So
37 hits in 5 years.
Yeah, that's insane. That's so crazy. Like, what are you doing out there? And then Robert Thomas, Nate's got him for 20 goals, 77 points. Blake's got him for 22 and 73. His ADP is 168.72. That probably is pretty good value for Thomas. I don't like drafting him because he doesn't shoot, but he is very high efficient. Like much like I mean, a lot of the players on this team, he's a really high efficiency shooter. So he gets like 120 shots a season, but then still scores 20 goals. So why don't you shoot a little bit more there, Robert? I don't really understand, but he's a lot like Michelli. Like Blake talks about passing it into the net.
Really hard saucers into the net.
Into the top corner. That's right. Jacob Vrana, Nate's got him for 37 goals, 60 points. Blake's got him for 37 goals, 61 points. ADP 185.32. I think he's a fantastic value pick at that level. I think at that point in the draft, you're looking for home runs. You're looking for guys with high upside. I think Jacob Vrana is definitely one of those guys. The upside there is huge. He shoots a ton. His underlings are awesome. Everyone's been pumped about him for so long. I think he's finally healthy. He's finally, I mean, hopefully mentally healthy. So I am very excited about Vrana. He's probably my pick in terms of value here. Braden Shen, Nate's got him for 21 and 56. Blake's got him for 22 and 56. His ADP is 192.59. He's another guy like O'Reilly who I do like his production. He does hit as well, which is nice. That kind of ups his value a bit. But at this point in the draft, I'm probably going for guys with a higher ceiling. Justin Falk, Nate's got him for 12 goals, 45 points. Blake's got him for 13 and 48. He's got really nice peripherals, shoots a lot, converts at a pretty high clip. And his ADP is 132.9. I think he's a really nice pick there, especially if you think he's going to get a power play time, which, I mean, he likely will because Torrey Krug is injured. He had a foot injury. I mean, he's always injured. It seems like he struggles to play more than 60 games a year. And he's really kind of fallen out of favor with them. So I'm not really sure that, I mean, at least that's the rumor. I'm not sure that he would have had a ton of power play time over Falk anyways, but Nate's got him for 10 goals, 41 points. Blake's got him for 9 goals, 42 points. That's in an 82 game season, but he's obviously not going to play 82 games. His ADP is 212.3. I mean, he's probably my punt, honestly. I didn't have him as my punt, but now that he's injured and he's just got that injury history, they've got Perunovic waiting in the wings, who's basically the same player as him, but younger and hopefully more durable. I don't know. He's too.
I haven't seen that thus far.
Yeah, not thus far. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm probably punting Torrey Krug. But in terms of my value pick, I think there's a lot of value to be found on the St. Louis Blues. Buchnevich is up there, but I think Jacob Vrana is the ultimate value pick here. What do you think, man?
I think the ultimate value pick for me is Falk at 132 and a really clear runway for him to be the guy for them on the power play. A power play that's full of assists and shots in very different places. I think that's immense value for the bottom rung of your defenseman for your fantasy roster. Like, I think the peripherals are going to pan out for him. I really, really like Perunovic, and provided that he plays well after coming off the injury, I think there's certainly a chance that he takes that over. But, defensemen take a while to come on, and it's going to take a little bit longer considering the injury. So I really, really like the upside of Verona, even at 185. I feel like that's really, really good value for the upside. I like Kyrou. I like the immense amount of shots that he's going to put in, but he only represents value to you in a points league. And at 61, even though you're comfortable with it, that's pretty soon for me. Like, I feel way better about drafting Kyrou at 90, where Buchnevich is going, and drafting Buchnevich 20 picks after that, right? Like, all of these players I'm okay with, but I only really want them at value, and the only player that's really presenting value in the draft stages is Falk, and I'm absolutely loving it.
All right. Let's talk about punts. I mean, I already kind of talked about my punt. It's Krug. Last year we said Barbashev. He didn't really produce a ton in St. Louis, so we were kind of right about that. But then he got traded to Vegas and got a huge opportunity, and then
got nicknamed really the Fridge.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we were kind of half right about that. But yeah, my punt is Krug. Who's your punt?
The punt for me was Krug before the injury.
So it's definitely Krug now.
I think Benner is a bit of a punt, but it wouldn't have costed you anything to draft him. So that doesn't really count. I think post injury, it's clearly Krug.
Yeah. Last year our sleeper was Perunovic. I'm saying Perunovic again. In 39 career AHL games, he has 42 points as a defenseman. So that's he's got some real offensive upside. Pretty exciting. A guy that people were paying attention to last year, but after that injury in training camp, people kind of forgot about him. I haven't heard him really being talked about a ton. So and like I said, I think he'll get some power play opportunity. They don't have a lot of defensive depth, so I think it's not going to be that hard for him to crack the lineup, especially with Krug out to start the year. So he may get some really solid power play time, even if Falk starts on the power play. Yeah, I like Perunovic a lot. I know you do too, but you have someone else here as a sleeper.
I have been fending off offers in dynasty formats for Perunovic for a minute. I think for the deeper fantasy community out there, he's still very much on the radar. So if you're thinking about taking a flyer on him late in your draft, maybe go around earlier, because I don't think that's lost on people. And I think that's definitely going to come to the forefront with yesterday's news about Krug's injury. But for me, the sleeper on the team has to be Joel Hofer. I think there's a legitimate chance that he comes out of seemingly nowhere and gets 70+% of the starts. I think Binnington is just a wreck, and I think it's going to get worse. So I think that's is that even fair for me to call it a sleeper when you don't even really have to draft him? I don't know, but I believe that Hofer is the clear 1A at the end of the season.
No, I think that's you could definitely consider him a sleeper, and I'm with you on Hofer as well. Winnipeg, they were fourth in the Central last year. This is our last team in the Central Division. They actually produced pretty well in terms of shot and chance generation. They were top half of the league. 5v5 save percentage obviously was great because Connor Hellebuck is a beast. So they were 7th of the league in that. 20th in shooting percentage, so maybe they're going to get some positive regression there. They had the 23rd best power play, and really bad generation numbers there. So that begs the question, why are they still not putting Nikolai Ehlers on power play 1 if power play 1 really isn't producing that well? I guess we'll never know. But Connor Hellebuck had the most starts in the league last year. Confirmed. I've confirmed it now. He had a 78% start share in 2023. and his save percentage 5v5 was 926. His ADP was 73.75. They also picked up Laurent Brossoit, who played in Vegas last year. He had a 939 5v5 save percentage in 11 games last year. He was hurt for a good chunk of the year, but he played really well down the stretch for them. Although I don't anticipate him getting a ton of playing time because Connor Hellebuyck is just a volume guy. They're just going to play him. That's just the way it is. He's the key to success in Winnipeg. Are you drafting him or are you waiting?
Man, Hellebuyck is just such a monster, dude. He does nothing but eat starts, right? Like, and they're not exceptional defensively. Like, they're okay, right? And
Yeah.
Bone's system leans towards defense, so that's going to behoove him a little bit. But I can't. I have like fully drank the Kool-Aid at this point. Like, I can't draft Hellebuyck where he's going. Like at 73, that's in the same vein as Otter. Like, I think he's going to eat starts. I think it's going to be a very good team. I think they're going to be successful defensively, but I do not want to pay that draft capital. Like, I really like Brossoit, but we're talking about immense success on the cup-winning team, not on the Jets.
Yep. And also, like, is he going to play at all? Like, I don't know. He might get 15 to 20 starts.
I was listening to the, I think, most recent episode of 32 Thoughts, and they were talking about there being a very specific conversation that is to be had with Hellebuyck when he returns to the team in Winnipeg. And my gut says that he and Scheifele get dealt in a monster deal that kind of shakes up the league and like completely rattles Winnipeg to their core. And it looks very different at the beginning of the season. That's just a gut. I'm clearly not an insider, but that's the impression that I get, is that they're going to seize the value of Hellebuyck and take that value and the like ability level of Scheifele and ship them out of town and try and change things, because they have so many complaints. Like, Hellebuck's such a cool character. Like, I don't know what to think, but just based on the tone of that notation about him, like having a very specific meeting with ownership and management when he comes back to the team, like the phrasing of that when he comes back to the team seems so divisive to me that I've had it stuck in my head for days now.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, that would be cool if that happened. I love big blockbuster traits. Let's talk about their top six as is. Daily Faceoff has Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Nikolai Ehlers as their top line. That would be a pretty nice, fully loaded top unit. I'm not sure that that's the way that it's going to go. They don't usually put Ehlers and Connor together, but it's definitely possible. And then Perfetti, Velarde, and Iafallo as their second line. They also have Nino Niederreiter, Adam Lowry, their new captain. But he's kind of a perennial third line guy and just kind of a fill in when there's injury. But Velarde is slotted into the center spot, which, I mean, he has played center. He came up through the minors as a center, but just played the wing in LA. So maybe that's how they're feeling, that he's going to be slotting in as that second line center. Do you feel like that's how things are going to go?
I mean, I don't know who else it would be. I mean, I guess Lowry has the capability to be the second line center, but they brought the Kings pairing in for a reason, and it would make sense to pair them together for continuity's sake. And Perfetti needs some offensive talent to play with on his line, so that seems like a very viable option as a second line to me, and I like it. Honestly, I'm a big fan of Velarde and Iafallo, and you and I are both fans of Perfetti. Like, I think it can certainly work.
Yep. They also have their top power play unit as Velarde, Scheifele, Connor, Ehlers, Morrissey, which I think is the ideal scenario. I'm not sure that that's actually how it's going to go, just because of all the stories about Ehlers the spot that he plays on the power play is the spot that Scheifele plays, and Scheifele doesn't want to budge because he's a fucking asshole. I hate Mark Scheifele. I really don't like Mark Scheifele. But yeah, anyways, I'm not sure that that's the way that things are going to go, but I guess we'll find out. Let's find some value with these guys. Kyle Connor, Nate's got him for 41 goals, 85 points. Blake's got him for 43 goals, 87 points. Bit of a bounce back year. And his ADP is 29.35. I think that's pretty decent value for, or I don't know about if it's decent value, but that's about where he should be drafted. I think that's fair value. Nikolai Ehlers, Nate's got him for 32 goals, 79 points. Blake's got him for 34 and 77. That's if he plays 82 games, which he has struggled to do. His ADP is 84.94, so that is nice value for Ehlers. That's a lot later than he's been drafted in previous years. Just I imagine because of his injury history, and just because Bonus didn't really play him a ton last year. His ice time is not super high. So, I mean, we'll see what happens with Ehlers, but that is decent value. Mark Scheifele, Nate's got him for 37 goals, 78 points. Blake's got him for 36 and 78, almost identical. He's very consistent year after year, really high efficiency shooter, one of the highest efficiency shooters in the league, actually. His ADP is 96.5. So that's actually pretty good value for Scheifele as well. Josh Morrissey, Nate's got him for 11 goals, 60 points. Blake's got him for 12 and 68. His ADP is 68.9. I mean, that's probably about right for Morrissey. I expected him to go even higher than that just because of the season he had last year. I think there obviously will be a regression as Nate and Blake's projections show, but not as much as I was feeling when we talked about our negative regression candidates. I think he probably, I mean, he's still going to get that opportunity on the top power play. He's a bonuses guy. He's going to get tons of ice time. So I feel like it's not going to be as much of a drop off as I initially had thought. Cole Perfetti, Nate's got him for 20 goals, 57 points. Nate's got him for 16 and 48. His ADP is 243.75. You could take a swing on Perfetti. I'm just not sure how much of an opportunity he's going to get. Obviously, he'll likely play in the top 6, but I'd be more excited about him if I had some confirmation that he was going to play maybe on the top line or on the top power play. But I think there are other guys in that range that I would prefer to take a swing on over Perfetti this year. And then Gabe Vilardi, Nate's got him for 22 goals, 47 points. Blake's got him for 27 and 57. His ADP is 202.61. I think that's great value for Gabe Vilardi.
I agree.
I think he is definitely a potential breakout candidate here. I think he had a small breakout last year, was injured for a bit, and then when he came back, didn't get a lot of 5v5 opportunity, but still played a bit on the Kings power play, which definitely helped his production. But he's a player that looks pretty good in the underlying numbers. Not amazing, but pretty decent. And will definitely get an opportunity in Winnipeg. There's just not a lot of offensive depth there. So I think he is probably my value pick here. There's a lot of guys like Scheifele. There's an argument for him. Ehlers, there's definitely an argument for him as well. But I think Vilardi, way down the lineup, I like him in that spot. So are you in agreement, or do you have another name?
No, I think all of the names short of Morrissey kind of represent good value for what you expect from them at their ADP. I feel like Kyle Connor has a good chance to surpass 90 points. I don't think it's a lock by any means, and I don't feel super great about him at the 30 mark, but I think it's certainly possible. Ehlers' strong chance should be, right? Underlying metrics, like we've all been screaming it, just play him more, play him on the top power play. I like Scheifele at 96, just like you. I hate him a little bit, just kind of personally. Yeah. So I don't love drafting him, but the fantasy manager in me still does it. I'm most excited about Vilardi. There are places where I consider Iafallo depending on the roster makeup. The only player that really is getting punted for me is Morrissey at sub 70. Like, just like you, I don't think there's any competition. I don't think it's going to be nearly as bad as our knee-jerk reaction early in the offseason, but I also don't want any part of him sub 70. Like that feels way too expensive for me.
All right. So you kind of mentioned you feel like your punt is Morrissey. Last year I said Blake Wheeler. You said PLD. I think Wheeler was probably a decent choice. He still produced okay, but I don't think he was really that fantasy relevant for a good chunk of the year. And then PLD was pretty good. I don't think that he performed as well as his draft position, but he was still pretty decent in most formats. My punts, I mean, I don't think I'm really punting any of these guys. I think Morrissey, I think I am comfortable with that ADP. Although I don't know that I will be drafting him just because I like a lot of other guys more in that range. So maybe Morrissey is kind of like a half punt, or like I don't know, maybe he's like an onside, squib or an onside kick. And then in terms of a sleeper, last year we said Cole Perfetti. I think if he stayed healthy, he would have had pretty decent production last year. Not amazing, but
yeah, he played well until that big injury. So
yeah, but mine is Gabe Vilardi. I think I talked about it already. I think he is definitely a potential breakout candidate here.
I agree.
Are you?
I agree.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of Vilardi. I'm a big fan of really all of the forward depth of the Kings last year, and I'm really excited to see Vilardi in a little bit more space as he passes the 200 game threshold. Very young. I think they brought him in a great place, and I hope he gets a ton of burn.
All right. Well, that's all we have for today. I mean, this was a lot of fun. We got through it. We're under 2 hours too, which is nice. We had quite a beefer of an episode. We just snuck it under 2 hours this time. We'll try and speed it up even more next week, but we'll be back with the Metro Division. I don't have a Metro Division jersey. I realized I have a pretty decent jersey collection, but I have no one from the Metro Division. So I don't know what I'm going to do next week.
Setting up for this, that the only jerseys that I'm missing in this division are the Blues and the Jets. So I think I'll be just fine for the Metro.
Yeah. All right. So, well, please leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. This is the most important time of the year for us to be on everyone's radar, and your reviews really help with that. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. I think Nate currently has a contest going on right now for a giveaway. So if you subscribe to the YouTube channel and you take a screenshot and send it to Nate either in the Discord or the Apples and Genos applesandzinos@gmail.com or DM him on Twitter, you'll be entered into a draw to win some Apples and Genos merch. Also, if you like our content, check out the Apples and Genos Patreon to support us on a monthly basis. We'd really appreciate that type of support as well. Hop into the Apples and Genos Discord server. We're having lots of discussions about fantasy hockey in there. Nate's also running best ball leagues, and you can get more information in the Discord about those. He just posted the 20th best ball league of the season.
Best ball 20 is open.
We are rolling with best balls. They are so much fun and really, really nice to get. If you got the drafting itch, if your redraft league drafts haven't quite started yet. Shout outs to the band there for providing our music. Their Spotify link is in the episode description. Follow us on X. Binksy is at Binklemania. Nate is at Apples Genos. Blake is at Blake Creamer AG. And I'm at Just Josh and 4-1. Please practice safe stats and happy drafting. Have a good one, folks.